Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you so much for listening to the Romans12One podcast. We would love it if you would go and like and subscribe whatever platform you're listening on to this podcast. That will help the algorithms just let other people know that they can find us and they can also receive the information that we are sharing with you today. It's our goal to share generational wisdom with the next generation, and you can be a part of that by liking and subscribing wherever you listen to the Romans12One podcast. We need to help people on our teams understand the weight of their role. You're not just playing guitar. You're not just singing. You're not just running the camera. You're not just clicking through lyrics on a screen. You are leading worship from your position. Beautiful. And when you lead, people connect to the Lord.
I kill it every time. I miss it when they're not on team. So it's easy to be like, well, they're my go-to. So I have them every single time.
What happens if they get eaten by a dinosaur?
Your whole system comes crumbling down. It's really true.
Sometimes it's not about age. Sometimes it's about a season. And when my season is over, when your season is over, wherever that is, you need to be able to hand something back to the Lord that's greater than when he left you. When that person left, then everything fell apart.
People from the church were leaving because they were following a person, and their system fell apart because it was built around a person.
What you win them with is what you'll win them to.
And are you
winning
them for Jesus?
Woo! Or are you winning them with
That's it.
And it would have been really easy to be a pole carrier, to look across the room at your relatives and be like, how come he gets to wash the basin?
He gets to go into where God is. No, seriously.
How come he gets to do that job? And I just have to carry the poles.
I want to touch those pretty curtains. Yeah. That would be me. That would be me.
I think for all of this, we realize the worship of God didn't happen if the pole carriers didn't carry the poles.
So good. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Romans12One podcast. We are connecting generations of worship leaders. We are your hosts, Marti and Tim, father-daughter duo.
Of the century. That's what you've said.
That is what I've said. And I will always say that. I've always said that.
I will agree with that.
Since I was probably in middle school, that's been my thing.
I came across a picture of us
Yikes.
from a few years ago where you and I happened to both show up at the house wearing
black skinny jeans.
Black shirt.
T-shirt.
And a denim jacket. Yeah.
You know why? Because we were both leading worship that Sunday.
There was a day. That's how we lived.
And Jordan's probably.
I think you were in Vans. I was in my Jace, obviously.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I will have to. That'll be a part of this.
That can be our cover image for Instagram.
It was a few years ago, so your hair was a different color.
You know what? My hair is 4 different colors. My hair is 4 different colors right now, and my roots are terrible. And you know why? Because I have a 6-month-old. So.
Awesome. Well, we are glad that you're joining us today. Today's going to be a little bit different. We don't have a guest today, which is totally fine because I think we've got some things that we can talk about. And,
for sure. It's just us. You're welcome.
Yeah. So it'll be a little bit shorter.
We'll see.
Hey, I have a question for you.
Oh, ask. Yes. I like it.
Who are some of your favorite worship follows? I'm totally breaking this cold on you. We did not talk.
I know. I was like, excuse me. I ask the questions around here.
Favorite follows on TikTok or Instagram when it comes to worship stuff. Right?
Some of my favorite worship follows right now. Great question. I love Tiffany, Elevation Tiffany. Okay, yeah. Because I'm just going to go off the cuff here. I love her style. Yeah. Like her clothes. I love her clothes. I really do. I love her clothes. And she has a purity of her heart that I just love. Yeah. So I love following her.
Genuineness is important.
Yes.
And we'll talk about this a little bit when we talk about our next topic. But I tend to be more, or flock more to, be more attracted to accounts that just feel genuine.
For sure.
Again, in a culture where everybody's trying to be something.
Yeah.
You just want authentic people.
Yeah, I love her because there's just a purity of her heart that I love. Yeah. And I would have looked up their name had I known you were going to ask me this question, but there is a couple on TikTok. I actually don't know if they're a couple. I shouldn't say that, but it's 2 people. It's a girl and a guy, and they just do acoustic worship sets, and they just call it worship session. And they're worship session 25 dropping now. And they do such a good mix of the old and the new.
That's cool. There's very acoustic vocalists.
Yes.
I know who you're talking about.
I love them. She's brunette.
Yep.
And I think he has a beard, like a reddish color. Anyway, but I love following them because I love how they just blend everything. Like I love the sense of like they can reach like literally 3 generations by the songs that they're singing. Yeah. And it stops me in my tracks. Like even they did How He Loves recently, and I literally paused and I just like listened because I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard this song since I was in, my gosh, probably early middle school. Yeah. But it kind of took me back to a time. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I remember the first time you brought someone to our church that was kind of like a reality TV celebrity at the time. And he was a youth pastor and you wanted him to like sing a song, and he came and he introduced the church to that song. Yeah. So it was just I love like watching things like that because it just kind of brings you back to like, oh my gosh, I remember the first time I heard that song.
That's cool.
And then I remember singing it all through like high school, and then I haven't heard it since. So so goes yes, you know, I'm like I will be obsessed with the worship song. Yep. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this song. I cannot see myself getting sick of this. I will literally have those like thoughts in my brain, and then a new song comes on and I'm so over it and I skip that one.
Matt Raymond used to have a song, and actually we sang at Experience Conference a couple weeks ago, but he had a song called I Could Sing of Your Love Forever. And I used to joke that
I love that song.
People really don't want to sing.
It's funny. That song's been like in my brain lately. Yeah. So random. Yeah, I just have been randomly thinking of that song recently. So it's really funny that you bring that up. We should sing it. I
mean, but I think there is a purity and an authenticity and a genuineness I think that we're all looking for. I'm like you, I tend to kind of be drawn to those kind of follows. For sure. There's a guy out there, Rogue One worship leader, which I really love. Yeah. You know, because he's just himself.
He's just rogue.
And
you love a rogue follow.
I also like Star Wars a whole lot, so that helps. But
he's a nerd, guys. You heard it here first.
But yeah, there's definitely people out there that I just I enjoy watching because they're themselves, right? No pretenses. So yeah. And I find as the older I get, the more I just want to be around people who
are just real. Just being themselves, which is really hard.
It is.
And like being in the other seat of that to just simply be yourself is really, really difficult.
Yeah. Because you have to be willing to accept people for who they are. Yeah. Good and bad. Yeah. That's what God calls us to do. Right? Yeah. And then you also have to be willing to put yourself out there and let people accept you for who you are.
And accept yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Another podcast time. So speaking of genuine, we're going to talk about volunteering today. Now, this is something that I get a lot of questions about is how do you build your volunteer teams? Yeah. How do you recruit volunteers? In fact, we've launched our new website, RomansTwelveOne.com. If you haven't checked it out, you should do that. It's better. It's better. So my website is
because I haven't touched it yet.
I have not touched it yet, but I'm coming. Started, and it's really difficult to post pictures of yourself for me. But anyway, so I
can't.
Used to, my website was just my blog, and so for the longest time, and then I stopped blogging. So for like the longest time, RomansTwelveOne.com was just like blogs from like years ago.
Raise your hand if you tried to blog. Yeah. I think my age group is probably the last. Yeah. But I mean that like from elder millennial to elder Gen Z, right? That whole gap, we had blogs.
It was a cool era. You had your opportunity to express yourself for the first time.
Yeah, I just lumped in with elder millennials.
Yeah, it's okay.
That feel good?
No, I am not an elder millennial.
Did it feel good that I lumped in with them? In my brain, you are, because we are not that far apart in age.
No, I was 23 when you were born.
I was just getting married at 23. So I was not even getting married at 23.
But anyway, so, but we've got it all updated. So now you can contact us and you can, see a little bit about what we do. But one of the things we're going to be doing soon is launching some teaching courses.
Resources. We love a resource.
And one of my favorite things to talk about is volunteers and how to build great volunteer teams. And I think part of the reason I love talking about it is because, I do it different.
You do.
It is not, it's unconventional is what I like to tell people, but it's been a process of like 30 years of learning how to build teams. And so as I've talked to people about it and I've consulted and coached people how to do this, I'm getting more and more questions like, why don't you put this out there? So here pretty soon,
So you should.
Next few weeks, we're going to have a new resource out there for everybody to grab onto, which will help you learn how to do volunteer teams.
I'm excited about this because so something that my pastor just had us do is we should a personality test.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one it was because I am not that's not how my brain works. Right. I do it, I submit it, I see my results.
And then it goes away. You're like, awesome.
Until we talk about it again, and like when we bring it up, I'll be like, oh yeah. But it like is basically strengths and weaknesses. Okay. Maybe you can tell me, I don't know.
It's Strengths Finder.
It's strengths and weaknesses, and there's 3 like levels. Okay. So there's like one that's like things that these 2 are your biggest strengths. Okay. And then there's 2 that's like you could do them.
Right.
And you're great, but they're not your number one.
It sounds like strengths.
And then there's 2 at the bottom that's like, you're not very good at this. Not really, but like, this is not your strength. And you also hate doing it is kind of the vibe that I got. And on my like bottom row was, and I don't remember the technical term for it, but was like getting people involved in the thing that you're passionate about.
Vision casting.
That was my bottom row because, and it was funny because it was like.
Do you think that's true?
I'm going to be vulnerable for a second. But when I am super passionate about something, I just want to do it.
Yeah, well, that's true. I'm sorry you get that from me.
I just want to do it. And I have a little bit of a like, if people have told me no in the past to doing this thing, it kind of scars me a little bit. So I'm not like trying to go have people like help me with these things. And then, my leaders and my friends will sit me down and be like, let's look at all of the tasks that you have. Why aren't you like delegating these things? And I'm like, well, I'll just do it. Why wouldn't I just do it though? So that is like bottom of my barrel. So all that to say, long intro, but I want to know what you would say to someone like me who leads a team. It's a stretch, guys. It's a stretch. But someone like me who leads a team, how do you build a team?
Okay. So I think you got to start with 2 principles up front. And this will be some stuff we unpack in our resource. But number 1, we have a great commission we have to follow, which is go to all the world, preach the gospel,
hit it where it hurts,
baptize.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, which a lot of people like to conveniently leave out, is teach them to
observe. Yeah.
Or observe.
Yeah.
So part of our Great Commission, if we personalize this down to a personal level, which I understand that this is eisegesis a little bit, not exegesis. We can talk about that later. But
so many theological
personalize
words.
this down to a level that there are things that the Lord has taught me and given me that is my obligation now as a follower of Jesus Christ to teach others as part of the Great Commission.
Yeah.
So if I've learned how to sing, how to play an instrument, how to run an audio console, I now have something that God has gifted me. It's now my job to teach somebody else how to do it. So that's the first level. The second level is the parable of the talents, which is I think this applies to a lot of things, but if we want to really specifically focus it here, God gives us something to steward. And as Jesus tells the story, the king comes and he gives to each, 3 different dudes, to each as he has ability. Right. So the reason he gave 10 to one guy and 5 to another and 1 to another is because that's what they had the ability to take care of. So the principle we take away from that is what God has given us, he entrusts us because he's given us the ability to do it.
Right.
And then as Jesus tells the story, the king goes away and he entrusts those 3 dudes to take care of his possession.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and wants it back. So there is a season in which we are operating in throughout all of our life. A season's going to start and a season's going to end, by which God gives us something and he says, I want you to take care of this. And then he's going to come back. Now, as Jesus tells the story, the expectation from God is that we multiply that thing. So the idea for us is that when the king comes back and says, this is the end of your season, this is your time, I want to know that you've given me back something greater than what I left you.
Yeah.
So when I think about my responsibility of teaching people in the Great Commission, my hope is that what I'm doing is multiplying what the Lord has given to me in other people.
It's good.
Because we are not building our own kingdom.
It's true. Yeah.
We're building somebody else's kingdom, and God's going to have me steward this thing for a while, but it's not going to be forever. You know, and so in the end, what I want is to give him something better. My favorite analogy for this is what I call the Jurassic Park theory. Okay.
Nerd.
There's a guy in the movie Jurassic Park, the original movie, named Nedry. Now, Nedry was the IT professional that John Hammond, the owner of Jurassic Park, hired him to come in and run all of his security. The whole park was to be automated.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where Nedry is arguing with Hammond, and he basically says to John Hammond, the owner, can you find somebody else to take care of this for what you've paid for me to do this? I can run this whole park from my one workstation.
Yeah.
And Hammond gets frustrated, and he says back to him, I know you have financial problems, but they are your problems. And I'm thinking about this conversation between these two guys and thinking, this is every pastor I've ever known. Every pastor I've ever known. I don't get paid enough to do the job you're asking me to do.
Say that. Yeah.
And 2, I can run this whole church from my office. Now, what happens?
Yeah.
Eventually, the dude goes rogue. He gets eaten by a dinosaur, and the whole park collapses because he's not sitting at his workstation doing his job.
Okay, you heard it here first. If you try to do this alone, you're going to get eaten by a dinosaur.
You're right. So actually, I'm actually working on a book called Eaten by a Dinosaur.
That's hilarious.
And this is the concept of it.
Don't steal it. We're gonna make sure it's
this
like
is copywriting it right here. So if you're hearing it, it's now out in the open.
I'm gonna take care of that legally. Right, cool. I have no idea how to take care of anything legally.
So anyway, so the idea is that like we build these kingdoms around ourselves.
Yeah.
And then when you remove, and we've all seen this in churches, right? Like when you remove that pastor, that worship leader, that coordinator from their position, what happens? Like the whole thing falls apart because it wasn't ever built around the gospel, the Great Commission. We weren't really stewarding the thing.
Right.
So
we built it around a person.
We built it around ourselves.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's what I would tell somebody in your
who just wants to do it by themselves.
Wants to do it by themselves.
Yeah.
We weren't made to create.
It's so true.
God's kingdom that way.
It's so true.
Anyway.
No, that's great. No, that was great. Well, it's hard for me, like genuinely, like to think that someone's going to be as excited as I am.
Yeah.
I think is a piece of it. And it's like, I'm going to ask someone to come do for free what I would 100% would do for free.
Yeah.
But I would do it, but would they?
Yeah.
You know?
That's a great.
And our pastor is always encouraging us, like, you get to invite someone to like be a part of kingdom building. Like, that's exciting. And I'm like, what if they don't want to?
Okay. So this is what gets to calling, right? So whenever I sit down and do an interview with a potential worship leader, band member, production team member.
Yeah, let's talk about calling.
I want to talk to them about calling.
Yeah.
We have this picture in Acts chapter 2 where everyone gave as what they had to each other for the benefit of the community in God's kingdom.
Right.
And it was because they loved the Lord so much they felt they were called to care for each other. What I want to do is I want to create an Acts 2 community among our church.
Good.
We are, we have a pretty significant sized church, and our band and worship leaders, production team are 100% volunteer. So we have 3 different bands with at least 5 vocalists. We have 3 production teams. Let me think about this really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 production team members each week. Let's make that 10 production team volunteers each week. So you're talking, 25-ish people, and we create 3 teams.
My brain doesn't work that way either. You just math so fast. I was still trying to calculate. I was like, trying to calculate.
If you've got 25 people on 3 different teams, myself, my media director, who's my audio person, I have an MD.
Music director, if y'all don't know what that is.
Essentially another worship leader on my staff on the platform with me. So there's 4 total people out of the 25 leading
the different parts of the team
that are actually being paid.
Yeah.
The rest of it is volunteer. And honestly, the way we built it, we could all 4 step away and it would still function without us.
At the same time.
At the same time. And it would still function without us because we want to have that Acts 2 community. So when I sit down and I interview people, the first thing I'm looking for, which we've kind of already talked about a little bit, is are they genuine? Do they genuinely love the Lord?
Right.
And two, are they willing to follow God's calling to steward whatever giftedness they have, whether it's singing, playing an instrument, running a camera, running audio, whatever that is.
Right.
And if they are, then they can make it on our team. So the expectation from the very beginning
is calling. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
If they're not called, probably not getting on our team. And what that might mean for us is...
And that's no spice, but like you can be the most talented person in the room.
Yeah.
But if you're not called to lead worship, that platform is actually going to crush you.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
It really is. And we can get into a lot more detail on that. But the idea is that I put a team together every Sunday that what they want to do is just bless the Lord with his
beautiful
people. That's what I want.
Yeah.
So they're willing to get up and be at rehearsal at 6:30 a.m. You know, and do 3 services.
Right.
And partially because we're not asking them to do it every week, but that we can get onto that here in a few minutes.
Yeah. I got questions already. My wheels are turning.
Yeah, but the other part is that they're genuinely called to do the thing they want to do.
Right.
You know? So
okay, because I know that you've been doing your bands like this since my earliest memory is when I was in high school. I don't know when you started doing your bands like this, but I think we were at a church in Texas when you started it. Is that when you started this, or have you been doing this for longer?
I've been doing it a little bit longer. We definitely have a method that we like to use for how we do our bands and such. The season, I only had kind of 2 bands, and we would rotate those 2, but I moved to a team of 3.
Right.
I don't know, several years ago.
Probably when we were in Texas, you moved to a team of 3, right?
It was when we were here. When we were in Oklahoma first. Yeah. So yeah,
I have always known that you've built your team like this, and I have like a couple questions. One, that's so many people on a team, on one. But how? I want to know, and this might be a little bit of a rogue question. You can cut this if you want. How do you get that many people to show up early or on time to like where they're supposed to be, and 2, how do you manage if they don't?
Okay. Oh, these are great questions.
Like consistently, if someone's consistently not showing up on time, as someone who consistently doesn't show up. And my problem isn't that I'm doing other things. I can't get my booty out of bed. It's just an issue. But how do you manage that?
I think there's 2 parts to this. Number one, actually, there's more parts. So I'll try to unpack this as much as I can.
Great.
I have a willingness to go without if we need to go without.
Oh.
A lot of worship leaders and pastors are not willing to do that. So if we have a guitarist who's late or doesn't show up or can't be there, I don't put a lot of pressure on them. It's like, we're going to go without today. Sometimes creating a problem can actually invite a solution.
Oh, yeah.
So if I've got...
That's great, actually. That's great wisdom.
And I don't mean like I'm going to make a problem happen on purpose, but if I allow...
Using a problem as an opportunity to create a solution. That's
Somebody
great.
out in the congregation may be like, well, I play guitar. I noticed they don't have a guitarist this week. Maybe I could jump in and play.
Good.
So it invites opportunity. And I think this is a big deal. Because so often we want to put our full band, we want to look like Elevation or, whoever.
Bro, I went through a season of hating acoustic sets because of that.
Yeah.
That pressure of like, we're not giving our best if we're just using a guitar.
Yeah.
And I feel awkward if I'm just standing there with an acoustic because I don't play.
I'm willing to do an acoustic set if I can't get enough people.
I love it.
And I think this is the thing you have to commit to. Because you're never going to get to the place where you have enough if you're not willing to be without.
That's really good.
And so that's where I start. Number 2, and we talked a little bit about this already, it's calling. If I got people who are called to it,
they're going to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think another big part of this is I want people sitting more than they're serving. So, and this is a big part. This is part of the reason I go with 3 teams in a rotation. Is I want to know that if I'm going to ask you to come and get there at 6:15, rehearse at 6:30, we'll do it. So our schedule is get there before 6:30, whatever time you need. We're starting at 6:30. When we're done with our rehearsal, we're going to have communion with all the production team, pastors, worship team, and do a little bit of a huddle devo. And then when we're done with that, we're going to do a full production rehearsal. So we actually do like 2 rehearsals on Sunday.
Yeah.
And then our first service kicks off at 8:15. So we are 8:15, 9:45, and 11:15 is our schedule. So by the end of the day, we've played 5 times. If I'm going to ask somebody to do that, I have to give them the opportunity to be filled somewhere else.
For sure.
So I encourage all of my team on the weeks you don't serve, sit with your spouse, sit with your family. Don't go volunteer in the nursery. Don't, now if you do that, that's fine. But I want you sitting and receiving the Lord so that when you are on a platform pouring out, you have something to pour out.
Yeah, that's good. Because we pour out of a filled cup. You can't pour out of an empty cup.
Yeah. And what ends up happening, I think most of the time when churches are struggling with this. They're asking the same people every week to do
everything
over and over and over, and they just get tired. They get tired of it,
right?
You know, and we all know, my favorite analogy is the burnout church lady organist. Like, we all know that lady. She's played organ or piano, you know, and she's
every
done it
week,
her whole life. She hasn't had a vacation in forever. She takes one Sunday a year off, and it's never Christmas and Easter, and everybody knows about it, you know, because she's just not in a great place. And so I don't want that for our team. I want a team of people who are full of God, ready to pour out the Spirit of God.
That's great.
So we've gone to the three, and I think those three things kind of culminate into the ability to have a larger team. Now, what ends up happening, which is really cool, is if we have a guitarist on team 1 who has to go on vacation,
he can pull from team 2, and they can swap.
Team 3, and they can swap, and I encourage that. So one of the things I don't do is I don't schedule for my volunteers. So they know what teams. We have what I call a simple schedule and a predictable schedule. So if you're on my team, you know what weeks you're going to start. You can look out into the future, into perpetuity, and you can say, oh, on this Sunday in March, I'm going to Disney World. I'm supposed to serve that weekend. I need to make sure I find somebody to swap with me.
Yeah, that's great.
And everybody will know how it all works out, and everybody can talk to each other. And then you call another vocalist and you're like, hey, I'm going to be gone on such and such week in March. Can you swap with me?
I like that too, because that gives like ownership of the team.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't give like renter.
Right.
Like, it gives owner. And I really like that.
Yeah.
Have you ever had the issue of someone not taking care of their stuff?
Yes.
And you've had to step in?
Yes.
And how did you manage that?
So I think I lead with grace.
Always. Yeah.
Sometimes we get somebody who's fairly new to our church. Usually I have like a 1 year. You got to be here a year before you can kind of jump in, because it's a worship platform. Like, it's just
for sure.
Not, you know, greeters. You know, and
you're a greeter.
No diss on greeters, right? I don't mean that, but there's just.
But it's honestly
a level of leadership that we're putting in front of other people to say this is a leader, right?
And at our church, we require if you're going to join worship team, you have to serve on host.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah, that's cool. I love all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily do that, but I love that.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you've been at the church a year and you don't really know all the other guitar players, camera people, you know, you name it, it can be really difficult to find somebody.
Call someone. Yeah.
So there's some grace on the front end a lot of times.
For sure.
So if somebody calls me and they're like, hey, I'm going to be gone to Disney World, and, you know, or my mom's coming into town, I'm not going to be able to, you know, serve on such and such week. My first question to them is, oh, okay, that's awesome. Who's going to fill in for you?
Yeah.
And that is literally my first response. Who's your fill in? That way they know that that's the expectation. And then, and then what they respond with next is how I determine.
Gauge the situation.
I don't really know anybody. Okay, let me send you a couple of phone numbers.
I can introduce you to some people. Yeah.
Let them know who you are. And let them know they know how this works. You know, if my friend Chad, who's been running camera 4 for me for a few months now, doesn't know the other camera 4 guys who are capable of running that camera, I'll be like, hey, this is Josh, and this is, you know, so this is Donnie. Like, give them a call. Let them know they've been doing this for a while. They'll know what to do. You know, connect them somehow. If this happens a number of times, then it's probably a conversation of, hey, man, do you remember when we signed up, we said, this is how this is going to work? Or you feel like you're struggling with this? And then it's a conversation of, okay, let's course correct.
Yeah.
Here's all the names and numbers you need. Next time before you call me, let's call all these people first.
Right.
And if they just can't get it,
then it's, of course, like, you step in as later in that moment. But that's also what I was going to ask. You let them know when they join the team. Okay. By the way, when you're gone, this is the expectation. And I think that's also a major key.
Yeah.
But you're right. It can be overwhelming when you're going in and you're learning, like, you're joining a new team and it's like, there's all the expectation. And you're like, it can be like a little bit like,
but I think,
I forgot that one. But
is leading them to the right.
That's great.
Action, you know? Yeah. And it's not why didn't you call everybody else? You know, I'm not like accusing them of anything.
Sure.
It's just more of hey, let's do this, and let's try this. Here's the people you need to talk to.
Right.
And usually what I tell them is, when you've made the switch, let me know, or let my admin know, and we'll make sure we get it changed in the planning center for you.
Right.
So I expect them to do it all, but I expect them to own their calling. And that's a big part of this. Is you get to own your calling. This is what God has called you.
This is your team.
If he has called you to run camera, if he's called you to play guitar, then you have a responsibility for that, even when you're not there.
Right. So. Right. And I've even heard before from, like, team members of, like, God, we need to talk to the worship leader, production, whoever. and tell them we need more people on this team
Yeah.
because we're getting burnt out.
Yeah.
And our creative pastor, I will like never forget her like witnessing one of those conversations before and being like, this is your team.
Yeah.
Like, if you need more people on your team, you go out and you find people.
Well, I think that's part of owning the calling.
You're an owner.
Yeah.
You are not just here to fill a seat. Like, if this is what you're called to and you care about this team, you're going to help build it.
Yeah.
And I always loved that.
Yeah.
And that always inspired me.
I also tell people, like, you know more people than I do. For the most part, these 25
These are my people. These are my people. I don't
you know,
like invite people to church. You're like, I only know people at my church.
I try really hard when I'm not on the platform to not get stuck in the green room. You know,
Absolutely. That matters.
Yeah,
that matters.
you know?
Yep.
So I'll walk through what we call our gathering space or the worship center before and after services. Like, I will oftentimes stand at the back of the worship center and shake people's hands when they leave. I know it sounds kind of old school, but I want to shake hands. I want to look into the eyes of the people that I'm trying to worship with, you know?
For sure.
So I get to shake a lot of hands, but I just don't know a lot of people. Right. And what I recognize is that you probably know people that I don't know. And if this is really important to you and this is your calling, let's bring other people on. This is
for sure.
We get this is the cool thing to me. We had a situation not too long ago at our congregation where there was a young man who was a part of our congregation who ended up having to serve time in prison. And he decided that he was going to use his time in prison to worship with us online and get other people to worship with us.
Guys, come on.
Right?
Come on.
Could have been mad at God, could have been mad at the church.
Wow.
Could have been mad about a lot of
Could have
things.
blamed anyone. Yeah.
But instead, what he decided to do is take that opportunity and connect to the Lord. And as a result, we have a little bit of a congregation that we don't even know their names.
That's crazy.
Worshiping with us on Sunday morning. Now think about that.
And that's just someone in the congregation. That's not someone who's on the platform.
Now think about that if you're a camera person.
Oh.
Right? So if you're running camera,
you're leading worship.
You are leading worship.
100%.
And you are helping deliver the gospel to people in a prison that they're not even connected to. And they get to worship the Lord every week because of you standing behind that thing, making sure it's in focus and moving it where it needs to go.
Someone who easily couldn't. I think it's so easy to think about, like, especially in the US, like everyone knows who Jesus is.
Yeah.
And that's just not true.
Maybe.
You know?
But
and like it could be someone
for sure.
For sure. But you know, like that could have been someone in that prison who didn't even know.
Yeah.
That like came to know Jesus just because literally because someone was holding a camera on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think it's so easy to, like, you were saying, like, you have different people serving every week. For people who do serve every single week, like, those reminders matter.
Yep.
Because that's what's going to keep you
so now
connected to your calling.
They understand the weight of their role.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, is a really big part.
Yeah, that's great.
As worship leaders who have teams, we need to help people on our teams understand the weight of their role. You're not just playing guitar. You're not just singing. You're not just running the camera. You're not just clicking through lyrics on a screen. You are leading worship from your position.
Beautiful.
And when you lead, people connect to the Lord.
Right.
So when they understand the weight of their responsibility, it's more likely that they're going to make sure their responsibility is taken care of.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think this is on us as leaders more than anybody else. If we have a team that struggles with serving, we have to figure out a way to lead better, because we have to help them understand your weight carries, your responsibility carries a weight. Now, don't do that to two people and make them lead every week.
For sure, which is hard to do, you know, like, honestly, nobody's trying to play favorites.
Right.
Nobody's trying to, like, have favorite kids, you know, but, like, at some point, like, you will have the people that you're like, they own it. They kill it every time. I miss it when they're not on team. So it's easy to be like, well, they're my go-to. So I have them every single time.
What happens if they get eaten by a dinosaur?
Your whole system comes crumbling down. It's really true.
Yeah.
Okay, so that segues us into my next question, something I want to ask. I've always actually wondered this about how you handle this, which I think it does have to do with calling and culture. So I want you to just talk about that. Like, how do you set the culture to where someone is put on, let's say, week 2 team, but they don't think that that's the best team? And they're like, oh, I got put on the B team. That's how I, like, picture it. Or like, I'm on C team. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Like, how do you build your teams so that like is not a part of the culture? Does that make sense?
Yeah. This is a great question.
Or do people do this anyway?
So I don't hear that a lot, and I'm trying to figure out.
I want to know why.
I think about what I do that might help.
Or maybe I'm just thinking of like children in sports and not adults.
I think first of all, I don't have an A, B, and C team.
Yeah, that's important.
So I'm not looking at like, this team has all my best people.
So like, is there intentionality in that to where it doesn't look like ABC?
So when I'm looking at the lay of the land, so about once a year, I'll look at all my volunteers, how my teams are built, and I'll try to figure out like, where can I help support people? So, let me use my vocalist for an example. Not everybody who sings vocals for us is going to get a lead.
Right.
Because some people are great at singing harmony.
Extremely. And like backup is not a problem.
No,
backup is support and it's needed.
Backup. It's just your role to lead worship is to sing harmony. That's your role. So, but you can't just put one of the problems, I'll just be real transparent. One of the problems I have with my teams is I have a lot of girls who have low voices. So
I get it. Raise your hand if you're a girl with a low voice. Can't sing soprano, save your life.
One of my worship theories that I operate off is when more people hear more people singing, more people are likely to sing.
It's true. Right.
So I'm a little bit unconventional in that I want as many voices being heard from the platform as possible. So I'll have a team of 6 or 7 people in an era where we've kind of dwindled our worship teams to like 2, or 3.
Yeah. I'm like, you see often like 3 or 5.
Yeah.
Is typical.
So I try to put as many as I can because I want to hear more people singing. And I think that's just true of human nature.
I love a big worship team.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
I love it. It brings so much to me. I look at it and I'm like, gosh, that brings so much life.
The problem though is if I've got a team of, let's say, 5 vocalists and 3 of them are low voices or tenors, they're not going to blend together very well. Right. So what I need to do is I need to move probably one of them to a team where there's an alto, or higher voices that can help kind of balance out the team. And so I think about this the same way with my bands is like, okay, this drummer is good, but this bass player, doesn't sync well with them. Yeah. So let me find the combination that syncs well together.
Right.
Or these 2 guitarists. There was an era I only had 1 guitarist. Right now I've got 2 on every team. So it's like, okay, how do I get the 2 guitarists?
You do like a rhythm and a lead.
Yeah. And so, so in the end, what I end up with is teams that complement each other.
Great.
I don't have,
all my best people are on this team because I have the most fun with them.
Yeah. I think that's
which dangerous. I think could be that to me, like that could be a trap.
Yeah. It can because
have you ever fallen into that trap? That's a really vulnerable question, but have you ever fallen into that trap, like in your young worship leader days, where like, but I want all these people because they're my favorite and I have fun with them?
Unintentionally.
Yeah. I don't think anybody would intend to be this is my B team.
I definitely think you have to be careful of like, I don't want to just throw all my favorite people on one team.
Right.
Because you will end up with a B team. And
they're going to know.
If you want to go back to the parable of talents, in the end,
they're not producing.
It's really hard to hear for some people. Our position at our church is not going to last forever. Part of the reason we're doing this podcast is because I want to pass along generational wisdom, knowing that in the end, there's going to be a day I'm not going to be able to do this. Yeah. But sometimes it's not about age. Sometimes it's about a season. And when my season is over, when your season is over, wherever that is, you need to be able to hand something back to the Lord that's greater than what he left you.
Right.
If you've built it all around yourself, it's not going to be, it's going to fall apart really quickly. So I try to build teams in such a way that if I were to step out even for a season, then it's going to be sustainable for some amount of time, with or without me.
I always think of like Chris Tomlin as an insanely good example of that.
Okay.
Like, because Kristen Stanfield was there.
Oh yeah. In the Passion is that
Passion, like there was like a while Chris Tomlin wasn't like putting much out.
Yeah.
Well, Passion, like he was supporting
Chris Tomlin, Dave Crowder, Matt Redman all at once.
Right.
And all these guys that we look up to as kind of the godfathers of worship, modern worship music right now.
Yeah.
They were all at one time leading together.
Right.
Passion.
Right.
Sometimes they still do.
Right.
But that birthed other teams and other bands.
And they had nexts.
Yeah.
That's something like our pastor talks about all the time is like, we'll sit in meetings with me like, who's your next?
Yeah.
Like who's your next? And I always think like, and even like Darlene Check, like Brooke Ledger would like.
Yeah. Well, and think about it, actually went Darlene to Joel to Brooke.
Right.
You know, so
and Joel and Brooke did some things together for a while, but you know, I'm sure there's people in the middle, but you know, you're sitting there like from like the outside, just like listening to their music, like all of them had a next. Was there anyone in particular that you felt like inspired this in you, or was this like a God dream?
I think there's just a realization in me at some point that this isn't forever.
Yeah.
This is, and
yeah.
I don't think there was a particular person, but I've watched so many churches build their church around a leader, a personality, a person, and something would happen to that person.
Or if they leave, or
sometimes it wasn't even a bad thing. You know what I mean? I know we live in this era of like, you know, where we're seeing all
let's find the dirt.
Pastors are failing morally and things
find
like
the tea. Yeah.
But sometimes it's just, hey, God has called this season to an end. And when that person left, then everything fell apart.
People from the church were leaving because they were following a person, and like their system fell apart because it was built around a person.
What you win them with is what you'll win them to.
And are you
winning
them for Jesus? Woo!
Or are you winning them with
That's
yourself?
it.
And so I don't know that it was a person. I think it was just more observation, watching churches.
Right.
I will say there was a season where there were leaders that were my leaders that struggled with that. And it was hard to move into what I'm trying to do because I want to honor my leaders, but also build up other people.
So like, but this is what I built. I built this. And like, I see a lot like you want
they required it of me. They want me to lead every week. And,
well, they want to see it like, they want you to see it as your baby.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But like some point, like, of course it's your baby, but like, are you going to trust someone else? Who do you trust with your baby? You'll have a babysitter. At some point, you got to go on a date.
I remember sitting with a group of leaders one time, and I was explaining like, hey, I want to bring this person in to do this and this person in to do this, and this is how I see the team developing out. And they looked back at me and said, well, what are you going to do? As if, you know,
as if you weren't going to do anything.
As if I wasn't going to do anything. And I think just the concept of multiplication is a difficult one to grasp. So
for sure. But I mean, we always talk about the Bible, like be fruitful and multiply. We always talk about that as babies.
It's true.
But like, got to duplicate yourself too, you know, and duplicating yourself doesn't always mean having a kid. Like, are you able to duplicate yourself in a position in ministry? And you have to.
So I want to build volunteer teams that multiply.
Yeah, that's great.
It takes time. Like, I didn't get to have 3 bands. Even, you know, I'm at the church I'm at now. When I first started here, we had about 1.5. That was over 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago.
Right.
And it took time to develop and build. But I think as people caught the vision and as the church grew, you know, we were able to add 2 things. When I first started, we only had 1 guitarist.
Yeah.
You know, and so we had to figure that out. And sometimes it meant hiring somebody in because I wasn't willing to make. In fact, we still have a rule on our team that in seasons where we have to use somebody more than once or twice a month, I won't let them serve all 4 weeks in a row. And that goes for any staff also. So for me, there's a week out of every month, sometimes 2 if it's a 5 Sunday month, where I'm not on the platform.
Same.
On purpose. Same for my other worship leaders and my MD. We intentionally take ourselves off the platform because we don't want everything to rely on us.
It's good.
And we want it to be sustainable, be honest.
Yeah.
We're stewarding something that is intended to be multiplied.
Of course. And you know, if you're like at a smaller church where there's like seasons, like you weren't always able to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's important, like keeping your heart right when you know that you're in charge of it and you're having to serve every week.
Yeah. I'm about to go on sabbatical for 8 weeks.
Listen.
And I got to be able to step away and know that. And this is a cool.
That it's going to be okay.
Also,
yeah.
It's like, God doesn't actually need you. He wants you.
Of course. He's obsessed with you. He loves you so much, but you are not, and you're necessary in the kingdom, of course.
Yeah.
But he doesn't need you to sing every week.
Yeah. Sabbatical is not just a time for rest. It's also a reminder that we get to serve. And that, you know, that God,
you love what you do.
The church is going to keep going with or without us.
I kind of experience, it's different, but I just did a maternity leave.
Yeah.
And it is an interesting thing to step back and know, like when I re-entered, that was something that like mentally I was battling with. And part of that was postpartum. Like, honestly, like you're all over the place. Okay. But that was an interesting thing to come back and know that like oh my gosh, like I'm disposable.
Yeah.
And like, you're not disposable in the kingdom ultimately, but you have that like sense of feeling of like, do they need me?
Yeah.
Like that's nothing crashed and burned without me. You wouldn't want it to, of course, but it is so hard to like not let your brain go there when you come back and it either looks better or is the exact same as you left it with no issues. And you're like, it's just an awkward thing to come back into.
I talk to my team a lot about we get to do this.
Yeah. Stop saying have to. Stop saying have to.
We get to do this.
Yeah.
There's no greater reminder than to watch it happen without
right.
It'd still be awesome.
Right. I think the first Sunday I went, I was not off maternity leave yet, but the first Sunday I went back to church, I like sobbed the entire service. And everyone was like, are you okay? I was like, I just had a baby. You don't want to know what's going on up here. I just had a baby. Like, but weird.
God doesn't want us to feel disposable either.
Of course not. But that's so hard for your brain. Like just like human understanding is so not kingdom focused. It's so hard.
There's this really great example, I think, in scripture. You get out of Exodus for Israel, you come out of the book of Exodus, and Leviticus really is just all setting up all the rules.
I love Exodus. I could do a whole podcast series on Exodus.
Numbers, and God starts to, now that he's established his law through Leviticus, what the law is going to be, you get to Numbers, and now he's establishing his people as a nation. And there's this separation of all the tribes and how they're supposed to set up around the temple. And then he establishes the Levites to be the priests and the keepers of the temple. And he divides them into groups. Some groups get the opportunity to like take care of the basin and the bowl and the altar and all the tongs,
I would love to be a tongs holder.
Inside the Holy of Holies, taking care of all the things in there.
Well, and at that time, I think I didn't even realize this until I was like late in high school because I was, all over the place running around causing drama probably. But you couldn't just talk to God like that. We didn't have what we had now. You had to go into this specific space. And then you had a group of people that their job was to take care of the curtains. And it tells us in scripture how ornate the curtains were. Right. They had to have specific wooden hooks and, they had specific decorations on them, the threads they need to be made out of. And there was a group of the Levites that was their job, was to take care of that. And then you had a group whose job it was to carry the poles. Mm-hmm. That was their job. And it would have been really easy to be a pole carrier, to look across the room at your relatives and be like, how come he gets to wash the basin? He gets to go into where God is. No, seriously. How come he gets to do that job? And I just have to carry the poles. I want to touch those pretty curtains. Yeah. That would be me. That would be me. I think for all of this, we realize like the worship of God didn't happen if the pole carriers didn't carry the poles. So good. That's so good. Right? Like, wow. We could talk about sacrifices and we could talk about the burnt offerings and the washing of the hands, the cleansing of the priests and the beauty of the temple. But it didn't happen without the pole carriers. Wow. And I think what we have to realize in all of this is that God has given us a calling in a specific position, and we get to do this. Yeah. But it's going to go on without us. That doesn't make us disposable. Right. It just means we get to enjoy something that God has called us to do. And when we can get to that place, that's so good. It creates a culture, I think, that is, that is one that sustains itself. Yeah. What you have to watch out for is the enemy. The enemy's going to come in and 1,000%. Something I go back to often, and like, this is very common vernacular in church culture, but like, if you're not willing to like scrub a toilet, you shouldn't be able to hold a microphone, like genuinely. And I remember in 2020, when the church was shut down. And I wasn't doing anything, genuinely. And I was going to the church once a week and organizing random cabinets. Yeah. And I remember one day I was scrubbing the bottoms of trash cans because I walked in and I realized that the trash cans were disgusting. So I'm literally like waist deep on the floor laying in a trash can. Like our pastor's like walking by, he's like, what are you doing? Like, I'm scrubbing the bottom of the trash can. And I had this moment of like realization, like I didn't know if we were even coming back in the building, but I was scrubbing the bottom of a trash can. Like, it was probably one of the most impactful moments I've ever had in ministry, because I wasn't doing anything that seemed significant to anyone else, because we didn't even know when the church was going to open again. but it was like, if I am not willing to do this task, why on earth would anyone ever give me a microphone?
And most people associate worship leading with a microphone.
It's absolutely not.
But
absolutely not.
Hey, you led worship and you worship the Lord because you blessed him. You took care of his place, that you stewarded the thing that he gave you. And in the end, this sounds so corny, but in the end, those trash cans were better than when he gave them to you.
It's true. And you know what? For the last 3.5 years, they've been used.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that was probably one of the most important moments I've ever had in ministry, of just knowing that, like, I was doing something that we didn't even know if it was going to be worth it in the end, because we didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will literally never, I don't even have all the words, but I just will never forget that moment of like doing something literally disgusting. And
bless the Lord and his people.
And that's not what I wanted to be doing, obviously, but it was like, am I willing to take care of this thing that the Lord has given me for this time?
Yeah.
Not even knowing if it's going to be worth it later. Like,
that's cool.
I'm just simply serving to serve, you know? And then I go in and I start vacuuming the sanctuary and I'm like sobbing.
I think we were all wrestling with it.
Were we okay?
Yeah,
like, I actually had to like,
I don't know that we
are we still okay? Like, I mean, I didn't have a bad quarantine. I was playing cards with my pastors every night. It was actually kind of a party, but like, you know, like we missed being in the building and being together. And it was like, I was literally serving for something with expectation that this might not happen.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important to remember that, like, what you're saying is like, you are leading worship, whether you're holding a microphone or not.
Or whether you're cleaning the trash can.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. We're all worship leaders.
100%.
And we have to steward the thing God has given us.
Yeah.
So I think when we do that, we own our calling. We steward it well.
Great.
God is blessed by that. And
for sure.
That, so.
For sure. And you don't do it for the blessing, but you know that, like,
I don't know.
God's going to honor a servant's heart every single time.
Yep, every time.
Yeah, it's good.
Cool. Good conversation today.
Yeah. You said we're going to keep it short.
Yeah, we did not keep it short.
I haven't even looked at the time because I know I'm a yapper. I just, man, sorry. I'll just yap.
I'm sorry. That's probably my fault.
You know, my husband's worse. We know this. He's way worse of a yapper when he's in the room. Like, it's been pointed out to me recently, like, you're a lot more quiet when your husband's in the room. Like, there's not room for two.
Maybe we should invite him on sometime.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I joke all the time with our lead pastor. I'm like, when my husband and I do announcements, I'm like, are you sure you want to give Noah a microphone? Because one thing about him, you're just going to say it and then try to figure it out later.
Hey, I just want to say before we let you guys go, if you're listening to this podcast or you're watching it on Spotify or YouTube, we would love it if you would give us a like, subscribe.
Yes.
If you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars in a rating. That's just going to help the algorithm so everybody can receive this information. Our goal is to pass generational wisdom on to the next generation of worship leaders.
Right.
And you can be a part of that by liking, subscribing, and rating our show. So
leave us a little comment.
Yeah, leave a comment.
Only if it's nice.
Please. I want to have
actually, even if it's not, that helps us.
It does. That's absolutely true. You know what actually would help?
All publicity is good publicity.
That's not true.
It's not true. Don't repeat that. Don't go there. Cut that out.
If you take this and share it in someone's DMs, that is actually the peak algorithm helper. Did you know that?
Or if you share it even to your story, it's the same.
Yep.
That share button is the same. I've been noticing that on social. I run our church social, and I've been seeing that recently. Like, our views go skyrocket.
So share it
when you share.
Yeah, like, rate, subscribe, share, do all those things. That'll help us out a lot. And one thing we need to let everybody know is before we're done here, I'm going on sabbatical, so I'm gonna take a little break from this for a few weeks, which is gonna be awesome. We're gonna be doing some retooling.
So I'm taking over. I'm just kidding.
We're gonna be doing some retooling. There'll be some changes. I think these first several episodes that we've done, we've learned a lot, which is pretty cool. So I'm not gonna call it season 2, but back when I was growing up, if you had a TV show, there would be like 7 or 8 weeks of new shows, and then they'd take a break. And then they'd finish the season later on. And so that's kind of how I'm thinking of this. We're going to take a little break.
No, Netflix has kind of started doing that again.
Oh, have they?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
When we come back, we're going to have some really awesome guests that we've been interviewing, like Yancey, if you know Yancey.
Yancey was my childhood hero, guys. Yeah. I am so excited about that one.
It's going to be fun. There's a great guitar player that I know out of Florida. Her name is Caitlin Caggiano.
Awesome.
She has an incredible perspective on how she looks at playing guitars and worship bands. And I think it transcends just
I love
her
that.
instrument. So I think that's going to be really awesome.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Heath Bottomley who runs the Experience Conference, who's also an executive pastor for a church in Arizona. He was once a worship leader. So we're going to get his perspective on kind of how some of that stuff goes. And I got a few surprises. So anyway, you might not see us pop up in your wherever you listen to this for the next few weeks, but when we come back, it's there's going to be some changes and it's going to be awesome.
So excited. This is going to be so good for our hearts and our minds. I'm so excited.
Going on vacation.
You have never taken a sabbatical.
I haven't.
You've been in ministry since I was I think I was 2 when you became a junior high pastor.
30 years of ministry this year. So it's crazy. And I've changed churches. Well, when I first started, the church I worked for didn't have a sabbatical policy.
Yeah.
And so I was at that church for a long time. And then when they implemented one, there were a lot of us that had to get into sabbaticals. They spread them out. And I just never got to it. And then I changed and we moved to our church in Texas, and I was there not quite long enough to get a sabbatical, and we moved back to Oklahoma. And so it's like 30 years goes by, and it's just, this is a good season to take it. Come back right before Christmas. So it's going to be awesome. So.
Yes, because you cannot let your worship pastor go on sabbatical before Christmas or Easter. You can take that advice straight from me.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. That ending is probably going to get cut off. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes.
We are excited to have you guys be a part of this. So hopefully like, subscribe, rate, send in your DMs.
And thanks for hanging with us.
Thanks for hanging out.
And keep doing it.
Please. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.